The Detroit Lions were America's team this year. Everybody was rooting for the Detroit Lions to win. And when they lost to the 49ers in the NFC Championship, our hearts were crushed. All right. Now, there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Detroit Lions Super Bowl opportunity next season. Because next year, you have both your coordinators coming back, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn. Both of those two guys got head coaching interviews. They were finalists for multiple jobs, if not one or two. You got Dan Campbell, who has proven to be one of the better coaches in the league. And I don't have a problem with his aggressiveness, but maybe he can find a way to be a little bit more smarter and when to pick his spots. You look at this roster, the majority of this team is fairly young, and they destroyed last year's draft. Everybody was giving them D minuses and Fs, saying Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta were bad picks. You don't draft those positions that high in today's football. Well, they proved a lot of people wrong. All right, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery are one of the best, if not the number one 1-2 punch at running back in the NFL right now. All right, Sam Laporta, to me, already is like the third best tight end in the NFL. Hell, I wanted to say he was the best tight end in the league this year because he was better than Travis Kelce for a good stretch of the regular season. So you got Sam Laporta right now that already is one of the best at his position. You got Jahmyr Gibbs, who you think about how deadly he was as a rookie. Imagine what's going to happen next season when Ben Johnson finally allows Jahmyr Gibbs to take more snaps at wide receiver. And they truly utilized Jahmyr Gibbs as the weapon that he was coming out of Alabama. You see, Jahmyr Gibbs just wasn't a traditional running back. He was a weapon. You can find different ways to get him the ball. He's good enough to be a wide receiver too, if you give him the opportunity to develop and get snaps at that position. He's just one of those guys with his quick start acceleration, how deadly he is after the catch, after contact. You want to find a way to get him the football in very different and creative ways. And then you look at how good their offensive line is. Jared Goff is playing like a top 10 quarterback right now. You're going to have to give him an extension fairly soon. The biggest problem that the Lions had this season was their cornerbacks. Their cornerbacks were atrocious this year. And their secondary is going to be a big question going into this offseason during free agency and the draft. It's going to be fascinating to see how they're going to address it. Because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is going to be a free agent. You only signed him to a one-year deal last offseason, and he missed the majority of this season due to injury. Now, rather you keep him around, I think that you most likely will bring him back. I don't see why you wouldn't. You know, he was pretty good when he did play, and I do think that he's a really good, impactful player in the locker room and on the field. He always seems to have a nose for the football. But you got to move on with whoever you have starting at cornerback. Cam Sutton and your other starting cornerback has to go. You got to find a way to get one of the best cornerbacks in this year's draft, which the cornerback class this year isn't that great, but there's a couple of gems there. Maybe try to address it in free agency or trade for a corner, but you can't run it back with Cam Sutton and the corners that you had this past season next year and expect to win the Super Bowl with those guys. This defense has to improve. They got to get another pass rusher. They signed the Canadian dude that had one of the best seasons ever for a Canadian pass rusher, so we'll see how he works out. But Aiden Hutchinson is starting to become a guy now. Now, he ain't on that Myles Garrett, TJ Watt level right now, but he's still a B-tier pass rusher. But next season, I expect him to take that next step where he really becomes somebody who is impacting games, and he could end up winning 3-4 games with the Lions. You know, just by himself with his impact. He could become an MVP caliber player. That's how much potential Aiden Hutchinson has. We'll see if he'll reach that next year. Overall, the Lions are in a very good position to capture a Super Bowl. They have youth. They have consistently good quarterback play. You got two stud coordinators. Your defense needs some slight improvement, but you have cap space. You have some draft capital. Next season, you could really go into this thing becoming one of the top two teams in the NFC. Because outside of the 49ers, everything else is up for grabs. Now, Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers are coming. And we'll see what happens with Minnesota. But right now, with just how great your coaching staff is and the culture that Dan Campbell has built and the momentum that you guys have going into next season, you guys are probably one of the teams that has the best chances of making it back to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. You got a better chance than San Francisco. They are going to have to bring in a new defensive coordinator. They have some personnel issues. The Detroit Lions right now are in the prime spot to win a Super Bowl. So in terms of the state of the Detroit Lions, they're heading in the right direction. And the Lions are one of those teams that next season, everybody's going to be betting on to be a sleeper pick to win the Super Bowl, even though they probably will be like the second or the best team from a talent standpoint in the NFC.